There's a strange feeling you might know. You can be surrounded by people, friends, coworkers, even someone who says they care about you. And yet something inside you stays guarded. Not angry, not dramatic, just slightly distant. Like your mind is always watching the door, waiting for the moment something changes, waiting for the moment they leave. And sometimes you wonder something quietly unsettling. Why does closeness feel unfamiliar even when I want it? This question doesn't start in adulthood. It usually begins much earlier, in a place your brain never really forgets. When a child grows up without consistent love, attention, or emotional safety, the experience rarely looks dramatic from the outside. Sometimes there's no abuse, no shouting, no obvious trauma. Just emotional absence, a parent who was always busy, a home where feelings weren't talked about, moments when you needed comfort, but learned very early that comfort wasn't coming. So you adapted. You stopped asking. You learned to handle things alone. And over time, something subtle started forming in your mind. Not a memory, a pattern. Psychologists call this attachment style. But in daily life, it feels like something simpler. A quiet belief that says, I shouldn't need too much. Or, if I rely on people, I might get hurt. This belief doesn't stay in childhood. It quietly shapes adulthood. It appears in small decisions. You hesitate before opening up. You downplay your feelings. You keep conversations safe and surface level. And sometimes, even when someone genuinely cares about you, your brain still asks, is this temporary? Is this safe? Will they eventually disappear? This is where many people become confused about themselves, because part of you deeply wants connection, but another part quietly resists it. Not because you're cold, not because you're difficult, but because your brain learned something important very early, and it's still operating by that rule. But here's the deeper question we need to understand. Why does the brain hold on to this pattern for so long? The first thing to understand is this. Your brain did not create this pattern to sabotage your life. It created it to protect you. From a psychological perspective, the human brain is designed around adaptation, especially during childhood. When a child repeatedly experiences emotional unavailability, the brain adjusts expectations. It learns something like this. Closeness is uncertain. Dependence may lead to disappointment. So, instead of waiting for connection that might not come, the brain builds a different strategy. Self-reliance, emotional distance, low expectations. These strategies often make children incredibly capable, independent, mature for their age. But what helped you survive emotionally as a child can quietly limit you as an adult. Not because you're broken, but because the brain rarely updates its early rules unless something interrupts them. And to understand how to interrupt them, we need to understand the mechanism underneath. Inside your brain, there is a system constantly asking one question. Is this safe or unsafe? This system involves structures like the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. But we can understand it with a simple metaphor. Think of your brain like an emotional prediction machine. It doesn't just react to the present, it predicts the future based on past patterns. If a child repeatedly experiences emotional distance, the brain learns a prediction. Closeness may lead to disappointment. So, later in life, when someone gets emotionally close, your brain doesn't just see the person, it sees a probability pattern. It quietly prepares for loss. This is why some people instinctively pull back when relationships deepen, not consciously, but neurologically. Your brain is trying to reduce emotional risk. A useful mental model here is something psychologists sometimes call the emotional thermostat. Imagine your nervous system has a comfort zone for closeness. If someone moves closer than that zone, your brain tries to restore balance by withdrawing, changing the subject, keeping things light, or convincing yourself you don't need anyone. This process is largely automatic, which is why many people feel confused by their own reactions. But the important thing is this: thermostats can be recalibrated, slowly, with the right signals. And that begins with understanding a few specific principles. 1. Notice your emotional predictions. The first step is not changing behavior. It's noticing the predictions your brain makes. Because many reactions happen before you consciously realize them. For example, someone takes longer than usual to reply to your message. Your brain may immediately predict rejection or distance. This is called threat anticipation, a common cognitive pattern in people with early emotional neglect. Instead of fighting the thought, simply label it. My brain is predicting abandonment right now. Why this works? Labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, which reduces amygdala activity. In simple terms, naming the reaction helps your brain step out of automatic survival mode.
Allow small moments of dependence. For people who grew up emotionally unsupported, dependence feels uncomfortable. But psychological research on attachment shows something important. Trust doesn't appear first. Trust is built through repeated safe experiences. So instead of forcing vulnerability, start small. Ask someone for a small favor. Share a minor concern. Let someone help with something practical. Example: instead of solving everything alone, you might ask a friend, "Can I talk something through with you?" Each safe interaction gives the brain new data, new predictions. This slowly updates the emotional model. 3. Expand your emotional vocabulary. Children who grow up in emotionally quiet homes often develop a limited language for feelings. Psychologists call this low emotional granularity. When the brain can't precisely label emotions, it often responds with either shutdown or avoidance. A simple exercise helps retrain this. At the end of the day, ask, "What exactly did I feel today?" Not just good or bad, but uneasy, disappointed, relieved, grateful. Why this works? Research in affective neuroscience shows that detailed emotional labeling improves emotional regulation. The brain becomes less reactive and more reflective.